Welcome to the All Facts Matter podcast, where we push back against corporate media propaganda with facts, evidence, and data. I'm Peter, the author of All Facts Matter. Let's begin. In the ordinary course of human events, we generally have to contend with three types of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. In the ordinary course of dealing with government bureaucracies, however, we must add a fourth category: Bureau of Labor Statistics data. We are reminded yet again of this essential truth by the latest quarterly early benchmark revisions to the BLS Employment data published by the Philadelphia Federal Reserve. What the Philly Fed's work shows, once again, is that the Bureau of Labor Statistics data is simply not reliable. What the Philadelphia Fed's work shows, yet again, is that the Bureau of Labor Statistics apparently has no idea how to fix either its data or its data collection methods. And along the way to confirming that the Bureau of Labor Statistics still prefers Lou Costello Labor Math over actual data and sane analytics, the Philadelphia Fed's work also shows that we are really in a jobs recession and that it is getting worse and not better. Now, longtime subscribers will know that I have, on more than one occasion, been quite critical of how the Bureau of Labor Statistics handles its employment data. Even before these latest mistakes and missteps, it has been plain that the official employment data put out by the BLS was off kilter. We should not forget, for example, the admission by the Bureau earlier this summer that over 800,000 of its reported jobs that it created in 2023, that it claimed to have created in 2023, never actually happened. And the error that we have to deal with this time around, what the quarterly revisions, early benchmark revisions found, was that in the second quarter of this year, that the United States actually lost jobs. When the Philadelphia Fed did its benchmarking and revisions for all 50 states plus the District of Columbia, it found that the payroll jobs in all 50 states plus the District of Columbia edged down 0.1%, as opposed to growth reported by the BLS of 1.1%. And this is kind of shows what's been going on here is the Bureau of Labor Statistics Establishment Survey data, which shows all the payroll jobs in the United States, has been increasing at a fairly steady pace, more or less, not a whole lot of change. But we see that the state level employment situation summaries deviated from that, but we're still showing some increase. But when the latest revisions and corrections as calculated by the Philadelphia Federal Reserve are applied, we're actually looking at a loss of jobs. And so, the forecast that the Philadelphia Fed is making about the rest of 2024 is that job loss rather than job growth is going to be the dominant employment trend. This is not a good picture. Now, what the Philadelphia Fed does each quarter with its early benchmark revisions is it's trying to give us a first look on the annual revisions to the statistical benchmarking that is used to help compile the reports each month for the Employment Situation Summary. basically what it's doing is giving us kind of an incremental approach that it can see that, in this, in one quarter we had this much correction, in this one quarter we have this much correction, and in one quarter we have this much correction, and add them all up, and you're going to get the total correction for the year. So this kind of breaks it down. It kind of lets us see this is where it's going, this is where it's going, because we can see how the how the data is evolving, and whether or not there's something to be concerned about. This also kind of shows what the actual growth trends long term are, and what the quarterly revisions are showing right now is that labor growth in this country isn't, that we're actually looking at job loss instead. And as if to add insult to injury, a good majority of the state level totals are themselves facing fairly significant revisions. Ideally, when you're looking at a scatter plot like this, you would, if the data is being well gathered and well maintained and was highly accurate and all that, we would expect it to be all the numbers to be relatively close to this line. That would be ideal. Instead, we're getting a lot of scattershot and scattershot down low, which means that employment growth statistics, even at a state level, per the BLS, has been systematically overstated. Now, if we go back to the first quarter and look at the Philadelphia Fed's data, we see that the nationwide, something went off kilter, but with the BLS data sometime last summer. Historically, if we add up all 50 states plus the District of Columbia, we add up all of their establishment survey totals, we get a number which is relatively close to the national number that is prepared and put out in the Employment Situation Summary each month by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There is some variance, but not a lot, and never for very long. They deviate a little bit from each other, but they always come back to each other. At least they have been. As we can see, in June of last year, June 2023, that ended. Ever since, there's been a deviation, and it's been consistent, and it has not come back. The two numbers have not converged again. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics will give us the caveat that these are two different data sets, two independent data sets. The state level data is not intended that it is going to add together and give you the nationwide data. They're two independent data sets. So the one is never going to be forced to the other. However, historically, they have been close. And so historically, they have been, this offers a measure of comfort that there's at least some level of accuracy, that at least consistency, that we're getting a reliable, we have data that we can have some reliance on. This is when two independent modalities can constantly converge like this, that's confirmation that we're at least getting data that is, if it's systematically wrong, it is systematically wrong in the same direction by the same magnitude every time. And that's a better situation than having data which is all over the place. Now, despite that, what the data, state level data shows is that after June 2023, the numbers did not match up. They've never come back to each other what they'd been doing previously, never deviating by very much or for very long. They've always come back to each other, flipped to one side or the other, so that the state level total together has always been close to the total aggregate number until June of 2023. From that point forward, we had a slight shift, and it's been not matching ever since. Now, this gets even further confirmed by the quarterly benchmark revisions themselves, which go on to show not just that there's a break in the data like that, but then it goes on to show that there's we're seeing, in 2023, we're seeing actual job loss. And as the first quarter data looks forward, we're seeing that there's probability that there's going to be some more job loss in the future. Yeah. Now, that first quarter, what the first quarter numbers show beyond a shadow of a doubt is that there in 2023 there was no jobs growth, really. Yeah, all the hundreds of thousands of jobs that the Biden-Harris administration claimed they created, yeah, they didn't exist. This is confirmation that 800,000 jobs correction, yeah, that's real. That's what we're seeing right here. Is that this is going to be that 800,000 correction. Yeah, and so this is just a complete shredding of the employment narrative that's been coming out of the BLS, that's been popularized in the corporate media, and what the government's been pushing. And it is confirmation that narrative is completely wrong. Now, if we come back to the current quarter's benchmark revisions, the June 2023 break is still there. BLS has not resolved it, rectified it, spoken to it, addressed it. It's just out there, and there's a discrepancy, there's a variance that was not there before. And that's significant because when you're looking at data trends, especially when you're looking at independent data sets, when the relationship between the two data sets shifts, that tells you something. That's a sign that something happened. And while the two data sets were closely aligned up until June of last year, suddenly they stopped, and they've been not aligned ever since. Yeah. And the BLS really hasn't shown that they care about that, which is a problem. Now, when we go on to look at the quarterly revision data that the Philadelphia Fed puts together, we see confirmation that, okay, not only is there, we see, more job loss, in 2023, but also we're seeing, there's actually been some, we're seeing, job loss in 2024, and very likely some more job loss throughout as we close out the year. And one thing that we're definitely seeing is that the numbers are diverging from each other, and this is not good because, again, the trend is that this data is going to more or less match up. They're going to vary a little bit, but never by a lot. But then we get up to here, and the data starts moving in not quite independent directions, but definitely one's moving along one trajectory, the other one's moving along a different one. They're not moving on the same path anymore. Yeah. Now, that's a particularly damning confirmation of what we're seeing in the household survey data, because the household survey data is showing that since November of last year, we've seen consistent job loss. Now, the household survey is the other half of the employment Situation Summary that gets put out every month. It's where the Employment Situation Summary gets the unemployment rate and unemployment levels, for example. But beyond the employment rate, household survey doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. It's kind of the BLS's dirty little open, non-secret secret. It's there in the report, just they never look at the data. But when you look at the household data, it tells an employment picture, it spins an employment narrative that is a lot less optimistic than the propaganda that is spun by corporate media over the establishment survey, which is where we get the jobs created numbers that are touted every month. Yeah, and it's in the household survey data that we see, not only do we see the job loss from last year and currently, but this is also where back in 2022, we see where job growth almost completely stopped for the bulk of the year. And especially through the first couple of quarters and only a little bit in the remainder of the year, it was just very, very little job growth. Instead of hundreds of thousands of jobs, maybe for the entire year, there was a few tens of thousands of jobs. Not a lot of growth. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it just simply plateaued. There was no job growth. And the Philadelphia Fed's quarterly early benchmark revision numbers bear these out, that this really happened and that this is really happening. Yeah. And what we're seeing is that, again, this is why we can look at when we see what the Philadelphia Fed comes out with. This is why we have to view the BLS jobs data with extreme suspicion, because it's confirming that where the establishment survey is saying, yes, there was significant job growth, in fact, there likely was not. And we're getting confirmation that the household survey numbers are, at this juncture, more reliable than the establishment survey numbers. And what that basically tells us is that the Bureau of Labor Statistics apparently has no clue how to assemble labor statistics. Irony abounds. Now, does this mean that the BLS is lying when they publish their monthly jobs report? The parsimonious assessment is that we shouldn't assume malice whenever stupidity will suffice. And while the Philadelphia Fed data is pretty condemnatory of the BLS data, and it tells us that the BLS is almost certainly wrong about jobs markets here in the United States, the Philadelphia Fed's data does not get us all the way to a conclusion that the Bureau of Labor Statistics is intentionally wrong, which it would be if it were lying. Yeah. It doesn't prove that it's lying. However, neither does the Philadelphia Fed data rule out the possibility or even the probability that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has been intentionally fudging their numbers, intentionally fluffing them up, trying to make them look good, dressing them up, or whatever. We can't conclude absolutely with certainty that the BLS is lying, but neither can we dismiss the possibility. Yeah. As an exercise in logic, what we know from the Philadelphia Fed's data is that the BLS Employment Situation Summary data is questionable, that the BLS is wrong. Yeah. What we can conclude is that the Established Employment Situation Summary is, more often than not, shot through with errors when it comes out each month. And the Philadelphia Fed data is not the only indication we have that something is amiss with the BLS jobs reporting. I've noted on more than one occasion that the privately generated ADP National Employment Report itself has been deviating from the establishment survey data fairly often of late. Now, nominally, that privately generated report is measuring the same data. And so you would expect the numbers to be similar. They would be close. And that the trends should more or less follow each other. If both reports are being accurately sampled and accurately analyzed and accurately measured, then what you would expect is that at a minimum, you would expect to see the trends be very, very similar to each other. The data points aren't going to match up exactly. We don't expect that. But the trends should follow each other. And when that isn't happening, and it hasn't been happening in between the ADP report and the establishment survey, that's an indication that there's a problem. Yeah. And when we see significant variation between the ADP report, the household survey, and the establishment survey, which we have been seeing, that also tells us there is something not right with the employment data. We may not be able to say specifically what, but something is wrong here. We should not be seeing three independent metrics of the same underlying data moving in such wildly different directions. Something is off kilter. And that's a problem because this data, which we now have confirmation is at the very least problematic, is being used by other parts of the federal government. Either it's being used to set policy, or it's being used to reach decisions about things like whether or not to cut the federal funds rate. Yeah. And so you've got other parts of the government that are utilizing demonstrably bad data, and that's a recipe for a problem. Yeah. That's not just irritating and annoying or maddening. That's alarming. That's disturbing. Because nothing good can come from bad data. And what the Philadelphia Fed has reminded us yet again is that the Employment Situation Summary is bad data, bad analysis, and simple bad math. Calling what the Bureau of Labor Statistics does Lou Costello Labor Math is not merely a cute homage to one of American vaudeville's greatest stars. The Abbott and Costello routine of how 7 goes into 28 13 times is simply the best and most apt metaphor for the absurdities that we see contained every month in the Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs report. Yeah. When a vaudevillian math skit makes as much sense as an official government report, yeah, that's a problem. That shouldn't be happening, and yet it is. Yeah, and the most the most damning aspect of all of this, and the reason I call it Lou Costello Labor Math is when we see the kind of errors that are occurring in the jobs data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we know that Lou Costello would fit right in at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He would be right at home. And that concludes this presentation. I hope you found this podcast helpful and informative. Please like it and share this with your friends. Word of mouth is how I publicize my work. Please also consider making a one-time donation or becoming a paid subscriber to All Facts Matter. Your support is what keeps this work going, and I greatly appreciate all of my subscribers. Without you, this work would have no meaning. I encourage everyone to be especially generous with feedback. Leave a word or two in the comment section so that we can keep the discussion going and that we may learn from each other. Thank you all for listening, and have a nice day.